Okay, students, so the last example for week 1 here is for the interfaces demo, interfaces being one of the harder things to grasp. It's not really a harder thing to conceptualize as long as you understand fully what the interfaces are. I have one here and it's commented out because I wanted to show you something before I go ahead and do the thing. If I have an interface and it has, say for instance, the states to stick into a list box, okay, we do that by having the interface. The interface is simply a thing that says, oh, by the way, we're going to have to implement this as part of the program. If we don't, then we're going to get an error, as you'll see in a minute. I'll show you. We do that in the class where we're going to have that. And I have a class here, and it's called the user interface class, and I'll show you that towards the end. The user interface class includes the interface state, and notice that all of our interstates should be named according to convention, which is to say they start with the capital letter I. Okay, so if I were to go into this without this being here, because this is part of interstate, then I would have to go ahead and implement it. Implementing it being, I have to write the code for it. Okay, complicated word, but what it really boils down to is I have to write the code for it. This is all I have. I could implement, or I could add other methods that I needed to handle when I implement it, but other than that, this is a method that exists, and you can't put in any properties, you can't do anything like that. Just put in what each method is going to get going in. I mean, I can set those going in here, and what is going to be sent back via a return. Okay, so when I go to user interface class, I can see that this is something that's going to come out, so I have to have a return. The return sends it back to the form, ultimately speaking. So I've got 10 states here, and you could add the others. I just couldn't be ours 50 states, you know how it is. So when I go to form, all I do then is say listbox state dot items dot add range, which allows me to set all of them in at once. U is the class for user interface class, and dot populate state is the method used to send all of the information in here and return it. In st is the variable returned to the caller populate state. Okay, so if we go back to here, populate state, parentheses, all of that goes back there, added into the range. The range goes into items, the items into the list box, and when we run it, all 10 go into there. Okay, so I'm adding a little bit of knowledge here in as much of add range as opposed to using a for each loop and so forth. But you know, otherwise that's not a big deal. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you what happens, because I've got one for capitals, and to be honest, I don't remember what the capitals are, so I'll have to look them up. So I'm going to comment this out, or not comment it out, but uncomment it out. Guess I should have done that there. And okay, so there is the interface for capital, and then in user interface class, I'll add back in the item for capital, and you see it gets highlighted immediately, and it says user interface class does not implement interface member I capital dot populate capital. Okay, so I capital is the name of the interface, populate capital is the name of the method. So obviously that's a problem. So if we click on it here, right click on it, you'll see that the first thing here is quick actions and refactorings. Okay, click on that. One of the first things there then is implement interface. Now what that does is it creates this thing over on the right that says public string populate capital, throw new implemented exception. I'm just going to go ahead and click on that. Okay, so it adds it here. Maybe you'd rather add it at the bottom, but that's not that big of a deal. I'm going to modify this from what it was so that it does what I really wanted it to do. I messed up in the interface, so interface capital. I should have sent it an array, and so again, this is the method, but notice that there's no braces here because this is just a quick template for telling you when you go to user interface class that this needs to be implemented. Okay, so again, right click, click here, and then it says, okay, this is what we've got. And you'll notice that this has changed the populate capital. Okay, so now what this does is it puts any of the methods listed in the interfaces into the user interface class that I've set up here. Now, this always throws in this throw new not implemented exception. I mean, you could put in a try catch type thing here, but it's not really necessary for this. So for the moment, I'm going to comment this out, and I'm going to do kind of the same thing I did here, only I'm going to do a quick, whoops, didn't want to cut it. Paste, and then paste so that I have a basic format of what I wanted to do. I'm going to call this one caps. Let go. Ugh, not that. Stupid compiler. Caps. This compiler sometimes. Leave it alone. Now then. Return caps. Okay, so all of that part's done. If I can get the compiler to let go of the dang cursor. I'm going to put this up here where it basically was. Okay, so Now the capitals, I don't know what they are off the top of my head. I could guess, but I don't feel like that. Alabama, probably Montgomery. Where's this? Oops. Capitals of states. First 10. Not oldest. Did I ask for oldest? I didn't ask for oldest. Fine. All 50, 500, whatever, you know. Okay, so Alabama. Montgomery, I was right. Copy. The next one I think is Juneau. Where's the... I just realized I spelled Alaska wrong. Osaka. Alaska. There we go. Might as well correct that while I'm at it. Arizona. I saw there was Phoenix. Phoenix. Arkansas ought to be Benton because that's where Walmart is. Let's see. Little Rock. Oh, yeah, right. Little Rock 7 or 10 or whatever it was. I'm sorry if I'm offending somebody. I'm not meaning to. I just... It's a reference in my brain of history. I don't know the number. California, Sacramento. Oops. Sacramento or Sacramento? Not quite sure what the spelling is there. I'll look in a minute. Full list. Okay, so Sacramento. What do you know? I guessed right. Okay. Okay, Denver and Hartford. Denver. Hartford. Hartford is really, really big history thing. Delaware. Dover. Can't say that surprises me. Tallahassee. I lived in Florida. See if I can remember how it was spelled. Tallahassee. Lived in Florida for 26. Tallahassee. Yeah, okay. And Hotlanta. Okay, so obviously that would have been 250 things there, and I wasn't in the mood to do 100 items. And it really isn't relative to interfaces per se. I mean, doing 10 is just as good. Okay, so we've got user interfaces. They appear to both be classed. I'm not quite sure what this is. Updating the base class, whatever. Yeah, okay. Form. I already have LSB, capital items, add range, populate capital. Okay. So this should now be ready, unless it's complaining about something. It says already updating the base class and adding and or base interface of class requires restarting the application. I would do that if you'd let me do that. What? What is it complaining about? I think I've ever seen the compiler be this obnoxious since this version. Alright, let's try the obvious thing here. Close solution. Yes, I want to stop debugging. I don't know what it's complaining about. Save. Could have been from that last error. Okay, now then. Interfaces. Okay, so there we are. So again, the interfaces themselves are just to use as a, I always say that they are templates for the class, which you then inherit in the class itself, like this. Okay, and once you've implemented them in the class, then there's not really a problem with that. So interfaces to me are little more than something where you set out, okay, I'm going to make these methods, and then when I'm in the class, I'll inherit the interface that tells me, oh yeah, don't forget to implement this in your class. Now, in theory, you also have one other advantage. This is decoupled, so how you implement it in the class is totally up to you. So that's a benefit. Okay, whereas classes, when you inherit something from another class, it has to be exactly like that, or you have to overwrite it, which is some other things that we'll talk about later on in the course. But yeah, I mean, don't get too hung up on this. This is just to help you remember to do certain things, and that you can make it do for, you know, multiple items. Okay, so, you know, populate state, populate capital, easy peasy. Oh, and when you're doing this, keep in mind to try to keep the user interface as, you know, the only thing that really is in the user, you know, the GUI, the WFA. Try to keep as little of actual code in that as possible. Okay, so I'm about to make another video to show you why that is. Okay, we've already made user interface class. We've implemented the interfaces. Okay, so let me shut down this video.